Hello and welcome to my Wi-Fi cracking course. In this course, we're going to talk mainly about cracking Wi-Fi passwords. All the attacks that we're going to talk about are practical attacks launched against actual routers that I have here at my lab. So all the attacks work and all of them are practical attacks. They are not theories. They're not proof of concept. They're 100% working attacks. So these attacks will allow us to obtain the passwords or the keys for different Wi-Fi networks, whether they use WEP or WPA or WPA2 encryption. The course is divided into three main parts. The first part is network basics. In this part, we're just going to talk about how networks work, how devices communicate with each other in networks. And we're going to talk about the interfaces, the wireless cards, and the modes that we can use the wireless cards and how we can sniff packets that are sent around us in the air. Once we understand that and we can sniff packets in the air, we're going to move to cracking WEP encryption because it's an easier encryption to crack than WPA. So we're going to talk about how WEP works first, the theory behind cracking it. So we're going to talk about the weaknesses in WEP. And then we're going to discuss three methods to crack WEP encryption without the need to any connected devices or without the need to communicate with any of the people who are connected to these devices. We're not going to explain only one method because these methods might work or might not work depending on the distance between you and the router. It's going to depend on your wireless card and it's going to depend on the hardware used inside the router. So we're going to talk about three methods so that at least one of these methods should work for you. After we do that, we're going to move to WPA. We're going to again understand how WPA works and what's the difference between WEP and WPA and what's the weakness in WPA that allow us to crack this encryption. WPA and WPA2 are similar. They can be cracked using the same methods. We're going to talk about this into more detail once we move to that part. And again, we're going to talk about four methods to crack WPA, going from slow to a quicker methods in cracking it. So, as I said before, there are three main encryption parts, WEP, WPA, and WPA2. WEP is the easiest one to crack. It takes minutes to be cracked, and it's 100% sure that we can actually crack it. With WPA, we're going to have, if WPS is enabled, then our chances of cracking it is much higher. So it's probably around 100% to crack the WPA if WPS feature is enabled. Again, more on this once we actually go to WPA. So this is just an introduction. Same with WPA2. If WPS is enabled, it's very easy to crack. If it's not, we're going to have to use a dictionary attack or a word list or a rainbow table. We're going to talk about all of that once we actually go to that section. So let's go ahead and start with network basics in the next lecture. Now, throughout the course, we're going to be using a number of penetration testing tools. You can go ahead and install each of these tools manually, or you can do what most pen testers do, including myself, and save time and effort and use an operating system designed for hacking. We're going to be using an operating system called Kali Linux, and it's just a flavor of Linux based on Debian, and it comes in with all the programs and the applications that we need to use pre-installed and pre-configured. This means that we can just install this operating system and then start learning or hacking. There are two options to install Kali. You can install it as a virtual machine inside your current operating system, you see that I have a network icon appearing in here. And if I click it, you'll see it looks like I'm connected to a wired network. As you can see in here, it says wired connected. So Kali thinks it's connected to a wired network. Now, if I just click try again in my browser, you'll see that I have internet access. So that's it. That shows how to install Kali Linux as a virtual machine. Don't be intimidated by this new operating system. We're going to go through the basics and we're going to use it a lot. And it's actually going to become very easy for you to use. Also, like I said, you won't lose any functionality when you install Kali Linux as a virtual machine. It's actually better to install it as a virtual machine because it's completely isolated from your computer and it'll be very easy to fix if things go wrong. Keep in mind, installing this on different hardware and different computers might show you some errors and some issues. So please, if you have any errors, just add them in the discussions and I'll help you resolve them. Right, now that we have Kali Linux installed, let me just show you an overview of the system, what Linux is, what's the structure of the file systems are, and some of the basic apps that we're going to use. Now, bear with me. I know the quality of the Kali here right now. I'm using it in a stretched mode, so it's not proper full screen. I'm doing that because there is certain programs that we need to install first to make it support the full resolution of the screen or of the monitor. I'm gonna talk about that in the next lecture because it's not advanced, but it's just you need to know some commands and I'll walk you through them. But for now, I'd just like to give you an overview of the system. So as you can see here, we just have a status bar, very simple. The applications menu can be accessed from here. So if you click on applications, you'll be able to access all the applications that come in pre-installed with Kali Linux. And as you can see, they're divided into categories in terms of the type of the attack that they allow you to do. So we have information gathering, vulnerability analysis, web applications and databases, exploitation, reverse engineering, all types of applications that can be used for penetration testing. In the places here, that allows you to access your file systems, the files that you'll be using. It's something similar to My Documents in Windows machines. So as you can see here, if we click on computer, you'll be able to access all the files and the devices. You rarely go here. This you usually access stuff through the home right here or through the root because we're the root users. So it's the same thing if I go to places and then go to home right here. And from here you can see that you can access your desktop, your documents, downloads, music, whatever. Same way that you have it for Windows or for Mac OS X. And again, you have your trash here where your trash goes. This is just a basic file manager, back, forward, and then you can double click a file to run it or double click a directory to open it. Here we have, again, as I said, the status bar. Here you can see the number of desktops or workspaces. Now, Linux usually supports workspaces, so you can And I'm going to just go to Google to show you that we have internet connection. As you can see that we have internet connection right here. Now this is just a normal browser. You can use it the same way you use any other browser. The applications right here, I'm not going to talk about them at the moment because we're going to use them in the future, and you'll see what each one of them does once we get to it. Before we can start trying to hack into networks and break into them, there's a few basics that we need to learn before we can do that. So basically, what is a network? A network is just a number of devices connected together. They are connected together for a reason, so that they can share data. This data can be files, can be resources. It can be, for example, your home network. Usually you use it to just access the internet, which is, you can look at it as a resource or as a source of data. So all networks, Wi-Fi or wired, achieve this sharing of data using the same principle. And that principle is, you need a device that acts as a server, and then all devices communicate with the server. So the server has access to the resource, and all the other devices on the network that are connected to this server, obviously, they can access the data from the server. So on most Wi-Fi networks, the server is the router, and all devices connect to this router, and they access the internet through the router. So all the devices on the network have no access to the internet, as we can see in this diagram. The only device in the network that is connected to the internet is the Wi-Fi router. All the other devices, as we can see here, we have client 1 and 2 and 3. They have no access to the internet, but they can access it by connecting to the router. So whenever client 3, for example, if it wants to open google.com, it's going to send a request to the router asking it, okay, I need google.com. The router is going to go to the internet. It's going to grab google.com and then forward it back to client number 3. So client number 3 does not have direct access to the internet. It has to go through the router, and the router is going to bring the request and send the response back to client number 3. Now all of this data, requests and responses, are transferred through packets. So you can imagine all these arrows are a number of packets being sent between the clients and the router. And in Wi-Fi networks, these packets are sent into the air, so they're broadcasted. And if you're within range with these packets, then you can just sniff them, capture them, and read them, and you'll be able to see the information in there. So all this data, so whether it's usernames, passwords, videos, audio, music, chats, all of that is transferred as packets. And it's always transferred between the client and the router because the client has no access to the internet. So if you capture these packets, you'll be able to see all of this data that's transferred. You'll be able to see all these passwords, usernames, emails, videos, all that. You'll be able to capture it and read it on your device. In this lecture, I'm going to show you how to connect a USB device to a virtual machine. As an example, I'm going to be connecting a wireless adapter to my Kali machine. But the same method can be used to connect any USB device. Now, as mentioned in the course requirements, you need a wireless adapter for the cracking section of this course. So these are the lectures where we're going to show you how to crack the passwords for Wi-Fi networks. Other than that, you can do everything else in the course without a wireless adapter. What I mean by a wireless adapter is a USB device that connects through USB to your computer, and it allows you to communicate with wireless networks. Now, most computers and laptops come with a built-in wireless card. The only problem is, first of all, you can't access built-in wireless cards from a virtual machine. Also, even if you can, so even if you install Kali as a main machine, the built-in wireless cards are not good for hacking because we need a powerful adapter that supports monitor mode and packet injection, and we're going to go into what each of these mean. But basically, the built-in wireless adapter does not support these modes and can't be used for hacking. That's why I recommend powerful wireless adapters. They're listed in the course requirements, and I'm going to list them in the resources of this lecture. And you can connect them to Kali like I'm going to show you right now. So I already have VirtualBox open, and you just want to click the machine that you want to connect the adapter to. We're going to go to its settings. We're going to go to ports. We're going to go to USB. And make sure that USB is enabled. And you want to pick the USB option that is used by your adapter. So it's either USB 1, 2, or 3. And for the adapter that I have, it uses USB 2. Then you want to come here to the plus sign and click on it. Now you'll see that I have a number of devices that I can attach to the Kali machine. Now I still haven't connected the adapter. So first of all, I'm just going to have a look on the available devices. Then I'm going to connect the adapter. And I'm going to list the devices again. I did that because we're assuming that I don't know the name of my adapter, because the name that you'll see here is the name of the chipset that's used inside the adapter. So it's not the brand name that you see on the adapter itself. So when I click on it now, you'll see that I have a new entry called Atheros, and this is actually my wireless adapter. It's an Alpha AWS 036NHA. So I'm going to click on it. That's it added here. I'm going to click on OK. And that's the adapter added to Kali. Now, before we can start Kali, we have to install VirtualBox extensions to allow VirtualBox to use this USB device. Now, the download link will be included in the resources. I have the page already opened in here. And you can see in here, we have a link for VirtualBox extension pack, and you can just click on this link to download it. Now, this will only work for VirtualBox 5.1.22. If you have a different version, so to get your version, you can just go to VirtualBox, About VirtualBox. If you're on Windows, you'll have to go to File, About VirtualBox, and you'll see that I'm on 5.0.20. So I'll have to come back here, and I don't have the latest version, so I'm gonna have to go down to the VirtualBox older builds, go on 5.0, and look for 5.0.20 and download its extension pack. So if you have the latest version that's listed on the main page, then download it from there. If you have an older version, go to the old builds like I did, scroll down and download the one that is compatible with your version. Now once it's downloaded, you'll be able to find it in your downloads or to whatever location you downloaded it to. And then you can just double click it to install it. So this is the one that's compatible with my VirtualBox. I'm gonna double click it. And as you can see, for me, it's telling me that it's already installed. For you, it's just going to give you an install button. For me, it's called reinstall. So I'm just going to reinstall it just to show you how it's going to go. And we'll need to scroll down and agree. Put your password. And that's it. The extension pack is installed. So I'm going to hit enter. Now, before starting my virtual machine, I'm going to physically disconnect my wireless adapter. And then I'm gonna connect the adapter once Kali fully loads. Now I'm gonna start it. So I'm gonna put my username, which is root, and my password, which is TOOR. Okay, now Kali is fully loaded. I'm gonna go and physically connect my wireless adapter. And like I said, I usually do this just to avoid any conflicts. Now, once the adapter is connected, you want to make sure that it's attached to Kali. And to do that, we're going to go to the devices menu. So we're going to go all the way to the top. We're going to go to devices. We're going to go on USB. And we're going to make sure that this adapter right here is checked. Now, sometimes it might not be checked for you. So click on it to check it. For me, it's already checked. So I'm not going to click it. And to confirm that the adapter is connected, we can just go on terminal right here. and type ifconfig. This command lists all the interfaces that's connected to the machine, and as you can see now, it's showing an adapter called LAN 0, which is the wireless adapter. So if you have this in here, that means your adapter is connected. If you don't, then ask in the discussions and I'll help you through this. Some adapters are not compatible with Kali, so that could be the issue, or the issue could be something else. Also, now if we go here on the top right, you'll see that I have a Wi-Fi option, which I can use to connect to Wi-Fi networks. Now, we don't need to do this because I showed you how to set up a NAT network, and Kali already has internet access through this NAT network. So we only need the wireless adapter to hack into other networks to crack their passwords. MAC address. Each network card, whether it's Wi-Fi card or wired card, it has a physical static address assigned by the card manufacturer called the MAC address, Media Access Control. This MAC address is actually written on your card and it's physical, so it never changes. For your card, for your specific card, for example, for your Wi-Fi card, it will never change. It will always be the same. The MAC address is used between devices to identify each other and to transfer packets in the right direction. This works by each packet has a source MAC and a destination MAC, and it travels from the source MAC to the destination MAC. Now, because the MAC address is static and it never changes, it can be used to trace you back and to identify your device. Also, since devices use MAC address to identify each other, so for example, you'll have some networks that only allow certain MAC addresses to connect to the network. They use a whitelist, or they can use a blacklist and blacklist your MAC address so that you cannot connect to that network. So changing your MAC address can help you either connect to the network by changing your MAC address to one that's in a whitelist, or it could let you bypass blacklists. So as I said, it's physical and static, so the only way to change the MAC address is to change it in the RAM. So it will only be changed for this session. Once you restart your device, you have to change it again. So to do this, it's very simple. We're going to use a tool called MAC Changer. So let's see how we do that. So first of all, to get your Wi-Fi card name, just type in iwconfig and it will show all wireless cards you have. So here ETH0 has no wireless extensions, and same with LO. And we can see that LAN 0 is my wireless card. So I'm just gonna disable the wireless card. So ifconfig LAN 0 down. That's to disable the wireless card. Now we're going to change the MAC address. We're gonna use a tool called MAC Changer. So always with these tools, it's always a good idea to look at the help. So if you just go on MAC Changer, help, we'll see all the options that we can use with this tool. So you can use help and version to show the version, and help, show to show your current MAC address, E, so that it doesn't change the vendor bytes, it doesn't change the manufacturer of the MAC address. So another is just to try a random vendor MAC of the same kind. A is just to set a random vendor here, the capital A. P will reset to the original permanent MAC address. So if you change your MAC address and you want to use the old one, you can use P. Or we'll just give you a random MAC address, and L will just print the non-vendors that you can use. And M, actually, it'll help you pick your own MAC address. So you can, if there is a whitelist, and I'll show you how you can see all connected devices. So if your target network, you can see there's, for example, 3 devices connected, and this network only allows these 3 devices connect. So you can just take one of those MAC addresses and change it and use it yourself, and then try to connect, and it will allow you to connect. So let's see how we change the MAC address. We're going to use MAC Changer again, and I'm just going to use random to set up a random MAC address. And then we'll put the device name, which is LAN 0. So very simple, MAC Changer, random, LAN 0. You can use the M to specify your own MAC address if you want. So I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, my original one was this. And it's been changed to 98A4B095CAA3. Okay, so now our wireless card is ready and we've changed its MAC address. Now we need to enable it again because we disabled it by typing ifconfig lan 0 down. So we'll do the opposite. We're going to do ifconfig lan 0 up. And that's it. The card is enabled and its MAC address has been changed. Let's just have a look on it. If you type in ifconfig lan 0, now we can see the new MAC address showing up in here. Now we know that the MAC address is used to make sure that the packet goes into the right direction. So each packet has a source MAC and a destination MAC, and it flows from the source MAC to the destination MAC, from the device that has the source MAC to the device that has the destination MAC. This is how wireless cards work in the default mode. So if I come in now to my Kali machine and I do iwconfig, you'll see that I have my wireless card right here called lan 0, and you can see that the default mode is called managed mode. So basically in this mode, my wireless device will only receive packets, or will only try to capture packets that have my device's MAC address as the destination MAC. So it will only capture packets that are actually directed to my computer. What we want to do though, we want to be able to capture any packet that's around us, any packet that is within our range. So to do that, we're going to use a mode called monitor mode. This tells the wireless card is, I want you to capture everything around you, even if the destination MAC is not your MAC, I want you to capture it. So basically we'll be able to capture all the packets within our range, even if the packet isn't directed to our device. There is more than one method to enable monitor mode. We're going to talk about 3 methods. We're going to start with the basic method in this lecture, and then I'm going to show you 2 more methods. The reason why I'm going to show you more than one method is sometimes monitor mode will be enabled, but when you actually come in to run an attack, the attack will not work. So in the future, if I run some attack and you see that you're getting different results, then just come back and try to enable mode in a different way. So we're going to talk about the first method now, and we're going to use airmon-ng to do it. So the first thing, let's just run the command on its own. So we're just going to type in airmon-ng. And you can see it lists the wireless cards available. And you can see that I have a wireless card called lan 0. So I'm going to start monitor mode on this interface. And the command is going to be airmon-ng start lan 0. So it's very simple. airmon-ng is the name of the program, start to start monitor mode, and lan 0 is the wireless card name, so it's the interface. I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see now, it's telling me that monitor mode is enabled on mon0. So now whenever I want to use monitor mode, I'm going to specify mon0 as the interface, and you'll see that in the future lectures. So for you, maybe you'll probably not get the same name. So for you, it'll probably be called lan 0 mon or something else. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you use the name which monitor mode is enabled on in the future instead of mon0 for me. So if I do iwconfig mon0, you'll see that the mode now is monitor mode instead of managed, and that means that we can use this card now to capture any packet within our range, even if the packet is not directed to our device, even if it doesn't have the MAC address of our device as the destination MAC. Now I'd like to note a few things. First of all, when you enable monitor mode, the card will lose its connection. So if it was connected to a wireless network, it will actually get disconnected. This is normal because, as I said, the card will not be in managed mode and it will be capturing all the packets that's available to it instead of only capturing the packets that are directed to it. Also, it doesn't really matter because when we enable monitor mode, we'd want to actually hack into a different network or capture packets from networks that we don't have their password. So it's completely normal to lose your internet connection when you're in monitor mode. The next thing is, make sure that you use the name that monitor mode gets enabled on. As I said, for me it was mon0. For you it could be called something else. So just make sure you actually use the name that airmon-ng tell you monitor mode got enabled on. As I said, it will probably be called lan 0 mon or something else. The third note is if you enabled monitor mode and in the future you run an attack and you got different results than me, you got unexpected results, then just come back and try one of the other methods that I'm going to explain in the next lectures. Now, if you want to stop monitor mode, you can just do ermon-ng, stop, and then you put the wireless card name which is in monitor mode. Again, for me it's mon0, for you it could be something else. And that's it. Now monitor mode is disabled and we can use LAN 0 in managed mode to connect to networks and use it normally the same way that you usually use it. With the latest update of AirCrack-ng, ermon-ng stopped working for some of wireless cards. So it will work for some cards, but for others it will not work. It will actually say that it enabled monitor mode on LAN 0 mon. So instead of just mon0, it's going to start calling them LAN 0 mon. And when you try to use this card, sometimes it's not going to work in monitor mode, even though your card supports monitor mode. So for now, I actually, with Kali 2 and with the new update, I recommend using a different method of enabling monitor mode. Now this method is actually the manual method of enabling monitor mode. So my wireless card is actually LAN 0. So let's just have a look on it. So it's iwconfig LAN 0. This is my wireless card. And as you can see now, it's in managed mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable it using the manual method. So I'm going to do ifconfig LAN 0 down, same way that we did in the previous method. And now the card is disabled. Now the next command is the command that's going to enable monitor mode on the card. So it's just going to be iwconfig LAN 0, the name of the card. And then I'm gonna say mode monitor. So it's very simple. iwconfig is the command, LAN 0 is the name of my wireless card, and I'm telling it to enable monitor mode on this card. So I'm going to hit enter, and that's done. Now, if you don't see any error messages, that means the commands are running successfully. So now I'm going to enable the card again. So I'm going to do ifconfig LAN 0 up, and that's going to bring my card up. And if I do iwconfig LAN 0, as you can see now, the card is in monitor mode. So in the next videos, I've actually used the old method of enabling monitor mode. So I've used ermon-ng, and I'll be using mon0 as my card in monitor mode. But if you use this method, then LAN 0 is the one that's going to be in monitor mode. So when I'm going to be running aerodump-ng, I'm going to use LAN 0 instead of mon0 because monitor mode is enabled on LAN 0 now. So as you can see now, the card works perfectly and monitor mode is enabled on it. Now you have the freedom of choosing any method you want, but this method will work on all cards, whereas the aircrack or the ermon-ng method, the method that's seen in the previous video, will only work on some cards. So we've seen two methods to enable monitor mode, and I'm going to explain a third method. Now all these methods achieve the same object, which is enabling monitor mode on your wireless card. The reason why I'm explaining so many methods is because which method work for you depend on your operating system, on your host operating system, and on the compatibility of the wireless card with both of these systems. For me, all three methods work fine. But some people, they have the first method work for them, for some people the second or the third. Now, in many cases, all of the methods will enable monitor mode on your card, but not all of the attacks will work. So sometimes maybe the injection will not work, or maybe creating a fake access point will fail. All of these things, we're going to explain them in the future, so don't worry about them. But basically, what the idea to take from here is, if you know your card supports injection, if it's an alpha card like the 036H or the 036NHA, or one of the known cards that support injection, if you Google the name of your card and injection isn't working for you, or the card isn't working well for you, then all you have to do is just unplug the card, plug it back in, and try another method of enabling monitor mode. So far you have two methods, and I'm going to explain a third method to enable monitor mode. Now, if any of the methods above work well for you, then stick with it. If they don't, then try this method to enable monitor mode. So I have my wireless card now connected. And as you can see here, it's called LAN 0 and it's my Atheros card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the card just as usual. So it's ifconfig LAN 0 down. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to run a command to kill any service that might interfere with enable and monitor mode. So the command is airmon-ng check kill. And there's no G here. And as you can see, it killed 2 processes right now that Airmon think might interfere with enable and monitor mode. So what I'm going to do now is enable monitor mode the same way that we did in the first method. So it's going to be airmon-ng start LAN 0. Now, as you can see, monitor mode has been started on LAN 0 mon, which is a virtual wireless interface. So I'm going to do ifconfig. And as you can see, the mode is monitor. Now, as I said, all the 3 methods achieve the same goal. All of them enable monitor mode. And in the future, we're going to use this monitor mode in doing different attacks. So if the attack doesn't work for you, all you have to do is unplug your card, plug it back in, try another method of enable and monitor mode. And hopefully one of them will work well for you and you can carry out the attacks. Okay, so now we have our Wi-Fi card in monitor mode. We can sniff all the packets that are within our Wi-Fi range, even though they're not directed to our device, and even without connecting to any network, even without knowing the password or username to the network. So what tool we're going to use? We're going to use a tool called AeroDump-ng. It's part of the AirCrack suite. It's a packet sniffer, allows us to capture all the packets around us. We can run it against all the networks around us, so we'll collect any packet that are within our Wi-Fi range, or we can run it against a certain AP or access point, so we'll only be collecting packets that are coming from a certain Wi-Fi network. We'll see how we run the program first. First, you need your Wi-Fi card in monitor mode. I have it now in monitor mode, and the name of the Wi-Fi card in monitor mode, it's WLAN 0. So we'll just clear this, and we will run AeroDump-ng and mon0. It's just as simple as that. Mon0 is the name of the Wi-Fi card that has monitor mode enabled on it. And now you can see it's starting to list all the networks around us. Another use of AeroDump-ng is to identify all the networks around us and to identify all the connected devices to these networks. So I'm just gonna Control-C now to stop sniffing, and we'll just have a quick look now. All the packets that we sniffed now, we didn't save them anywhere, so there was really no point of analyzing the packets, because we just ran it against all the access points around us to see what networks are around us and gather information about these networks. So you can see like there is quite a good bit of networks around me. The BSS ID is the MAC address for the access point. So as we said, each network device has a MAC address, and it's here written under the BSS ID column. The PWR is the power. So it's how far is the access point from our Wi-Fi card. You can see the test IP. This is the AP. This is the test router that we will be running a few attacks against. It's here in my room, so it's very close to me. It's -34. You can see as you go down, the networks are further and further away from me. So the closer the network, the easier for you to get to sniff the packets, because obviously you're closer and the packets can be collected easier. Also, all the attacks that we're going to explain in the future, the closer the network to you, the more effective the attack, and the quicker you will gain your access or achieve your goal. Beacons is the signals that the AP send. So each access point send a certain type of packets to tell all the clients around it that I exist and I'm there. So even if the network was hidden, it will still send these beacons to tell everyone around that network is, I'm here, I'm an AP, I have my BSS ID to be this, and I'm running on this information. So this is the number of beacons that each access point is sending. The data is the number of useful packets that we have sniffed. We'll talk about this later when we start talking about decrypting web encryption. So we'll just leave this for now. S is the number of data packets that we have collected in the past 10 seconds. So as you can see, we have 0 here, so 0 data packets in the past 10 seconds. Channel is the number of channel that the access point is broadcasting on. So each access point broadcasts on a certain channel. This is used so that there is no interference between access points that are beside each other. So say for example, I have an access point here, and like 5 meters from me there is another access point. If both of them are running on the same channel, there will be interference between those two access points, and the signal between them will be shorter. So the range of those access points will be shorter. So we use different channels so that there is no interference between the packets that are sent in the air. MB is the maximum speed supported by this access point, so it can go up to 54. Inc is the encryption that's used in that access point. So we see the encryption here is web, here is WPA2, here is web again, we have WPA here, and if it's an open network you'll see OPN here in the encryption. Cipher is the cipher that's used to decrypt the packets. So for web it's web, but for WPA2 it can be CCMP, it could be TKIP. We'll talk about these later when we get into WPA cracking. Auth is the type of authentication that's required for this access point. So we have PSK, pre-shared key here. We have MGT for this one. And we'll talk about this later as well when we go to WPA cracking. In the previous video, we saw how we can use AeroDump-ng to see all the networks that are within our Wi-Fi range and collect information about these networks, such as the BSS ID, the channel, the distance between us and that access point, the encryption that it uses, and so on. Now after we do that, we'll see a certain network that we want to target, or a number of networks that we want to target. So once we have our target, it's more useful to run AeroDump-ng on that network only instead of running it on all the networks around us. So in this video we'll see how we can do that. So I have my output here from just running AeroDump-ng mon0 on all networks around me, and I'm going to target this network. So that's my home network, the UPC62. I'm going to start sniffing on that network only instead of sniffing on all networks around me. To do this, we're going to use the same program, so it's AeroDump-ng, and then we're going to specify the channel. So I'm going to give the channel, and the channel here is number 2, as you can see here. And then I'm going to specify the BSS ID, which is the MAC address of the target network, and it's this. So we're going to copy paste it. And then I'm going to add a write option, and this tells AeroDump-ng to log all the packets that it captures into a file, and the file name is, I'm going to call it now, so let's call it test UPC. And then we put the name of our Wi-Fi card with monitor mode, and it's mon0. So AeroDump-ng, same as the program that we used before. Channel, we put the channel of the target access point, and BSS ID, we put the MAC address of the target point access point, and write, we put the file name that we want all the packets to be stored on. And then we have mon0, the name of our Wi-Fi card with monitor mode. So I'm going to hit enter, and as you can see, the only network that shows up is UPC62. We don't have any other networks with us. And we can now have a look on this section. In the previous video, we had too many networks here, so we only had one section in AeroDump-ng. This section was missing here, the second section. So the first section, as we saw in the previous video, contains all the access points that are within our Wi-Fi range. This section here. Now the second section contains all the clients that are associated with the access points here. So in here, this is not a network, this is a client, and it's connected to this network. We know that because we see the BSS ID here. That's the MAC address of the network that this client is connected to. So the MAC address here is the same as the MAC address here. So that means this client is connected to this network. Now the station, is the MAC address of the client. So this is the MAC address of the device that is connected to the network. Power is the distance between us and this device. Rate is the maximum speed that this device is running on. Lost is the number of packets that we lost or we couldn't capture from the target device. And frames is the number of useful packets that we collected from that device. We'll talk more about frames and data, as I said, when we start talking about web cracking. So just want to show you now the two main parts again. So the first main part is the access points that are within our Wi-Fi range. The second main part of AeroDump is the clients that are associated with these access points. We have the MAC address of the access point here and the MAC address of the actual client in here. Now I'm going to Control-C. So now all the data has been logged into a file called test-upc. I'm going to use ls, which is a command to list files in Linux, and just list the files that AeroDump created. So it's going to add a star after it. And we see AeroDump automatically created four file formats. So in our command, we only specified the file name as test-upc. You can see that AeroDump automatically added a 01 to the file name. It adds this just in case there is another file that has the same name. And then we have 4 different file formats: the cap, CSV, Kismet, and Kismet XML. Let's go have a look on the files here in my home directory. So it should be called test. Yeah, that's it. So that's the files here, and they're in the home directory because my terminal is working in the home directory. If we go pwd, we see we're in the root directory. Okay, now after we sniff those packets, we can use a program such as Wireshark to analyze these packets and see what information we gathered. The problem is, in this specific network, it's using WPA encryption, so all the packets are encrypted, and we won't be able to decrypt them unless we have the key. So we're going to talk about how we crack the key in section 2 of this course, and we're going to talk about how we use Wireshark in section 3 of this course. So I'm just going to run Wireshark just to give you a quick look on how the packets show up. So they're not going to be useful. They're all going to be encrypted, so they won't really be any use to us. So if I'm going to go on the open file and test, yeah, that's the file name, and I opened it. And we see here we can get some information. So we can see, for example, here the source device is a Broadcom device, and it's going to it's just being broadcasted here. We can see here we have an Apple device communicating with the Broadcom. That's as much as you'll get. You'll get MAC addresses, you'll get maybe devices, manufacturers, very simple information. All this because the network is encrypted. We're going to talk about how we can decrypt it and how we can get very sensitive information after we connect to the network. If it's an open network, you can connect to it straight away and jump to part 3, where we're going to talk about these powerful attacks. For now, I just wanted to give you a quick look on how the packets look when the network is encrypted. Don't be scared of Wireshark. We're going to talk about it again in the 3rd section. We're going to explain everything about it. So for now, I just wanted to show you a quick look on what the packets look like. The authentication attacks. So we're still in our first section of the course, which means all the attacks that we're going to talk about are attacks that we can launch on any network that is within our Wi-Fi range, even if the network has encryption, even if it uses a key, and even if we don't have that key. So we don't have to connect to any network to launch these attacks. The deauthentication attack is very useful. It allows us to disconnect any device from any network that is within our Wi-Fi range. To do this, we're going to spoof our MAC address to the target client MAC address. So the target client is the client that we want to disconnect. We're going to pretend to be him, and we're going to send a deauthentication packet to the router. So we're going to tell the router, I want to disconnect from you. At the same time, we're going to spoof our MAC address to the access point MAC address, to the router's MAC address, and tell the target client, the client that we want to disconnect, we're going to tell him you need to re-authenticate yourself. So when we do this, we're going to successfully disconnect the target client. So we're going to pretend to be the target client and tell the access point that we need to disconnect from you, we want to disconnect from you. And then we're going to pretend to be the access point and tell the client you need to reconnect, if you need to re-authenticate yourself. When we do that, the connection is lost. We're going to use a tool called AirPlayNG to do it. So let's see how we can do that. First of all, we're going to need to run aerodumpng on the target network because we want to see which clients are connected to it. So we want to see what devices are connected to this network. So our first command is going to be aerodumpng. And I'm not going to need the right option, so I'm just going to delete it here. So all I'm going to need is aerodumpng channel. We put the channel of the target network, and BSSID, the MAC address of the target network. And we hit enter. And now we're sniffing on my target network, which is UPC62. So my target device is going to be this device. This method would work on any device, whether it's a Linux, Windows, Mac, if it's a phone, Android, iOS, it doesn't matter. They all use the same method of transferring packets, so it's going to work on any Wi-Fi enabled device. Let's make sure we have connection here. I'm just going to go to google.com. Make sure I'm connected to the internet. Okay, so we see now that Google is working perfectly. Let's go back here, and I'm gonna split the screen here. So we're gonna run AirPlayNG now to disassociate one of the devices from the network. We can run it to disassociate all devices, but I found when I do that, it doesn't really disassociate all of them because we have too many targets to disassociate. So I'm gonna choose one target, which is going to be this device, the device that we just saw. So it's going to be AirPlayNG, the authentication attack, and then we're going to put the number of deauthentication packets that we're going to send. So I just put a very large number to keep the device disconnected. Then we're going to put the target access point. So it's the MAC address of our target access point. This is it. And then we're going to put the source or the client MAC address. That's the device that we want to disconnect, and it's this device here. So I put its MAC address there, and I'm just gonna put 10, my Wi-Fi card with monitor mode. So again, AirPlayNG, the auth, the number of packets, then we put the MAC address of the target AP, and then the MAC address of the device that we want to disconnect. I'm gonna hit enter, and AirPlayNG now send in the authentication packets. Let's go to the target device and see if we still have internet connection. And as you can see, we lost our connection and it's now trying to reconnect. It's not going to be able to reconnect because we're still sending the authentication packets. So this device is successfully disconnected, and we can launch this attack on any network that we want. We don't need to know the username, we don't need to know the password or the key to that network. Now, one of the major obstacles that you might find while trying to gain access to a network is if the network does not broadcast its name, so if the network is hidden. If the network is hidden, then you won't be able to connect to the network even if it does not use any password. And if it uses a password, then you won't be able to use the attacks that we're gonna talk about in future lectures. So you literally won't be able to do anything until you know the name of the network. So just to show you an example here, I have my own network and I've set it to be hidden. So I checked this box which says mask SSID. Now this could be called something else for you again, but for me that's the name of it. And I've called the network test AP. So the network actually has a name, but it just doesn't broadcast the name in the air. I've also set the network to not to use any security, so people can connect as long as they know the network name. So if we go here on the Windows machine, I just want to show you an example. If we go on Wi-Fi networks, you'll see that there is a hidden network around us. But if we try to connect to this hidden network, if I click on it and click on connect, the first thing that it's going to ask me is to enter the name of the network. Therefore, we can't actually connect to it if we don't know its name. And if the network is using encryption, so if it's using a password for the network, then we won't be able to launch the cracking attacks if we don't know the name. So if your target network is hidden, the first step is always to try and determine the name of that network, regardless of whether it uses encryption, if it uses a password, or if it does not use a password. So in this lecture, I'm going to cover how to determine the name of hidden networks and how to connect to the network. Now I'm going to go to my Kali machine and I'm going to run aerodump-ng on my wireless card in monitor mode. So we did this before. All I do is aerodump-ng and then I put the name of the wireless card, which is mon0. And if I hit enter, as you can see, I can see all my networks around me. And we can see the hidden network around us. And the hidden network is actually this one. So you can see that we can actually get all the information of that network. So we can get its MAC address, we can see its distance, we can see the beacons, we can see the data if there was a lot of data sent, we can see the encryption. So in our case it's open, it's not using encryption, but if it was using encryption, then you'll see it uses WIP or WPA or whatever it's using. The only thing that's hidden is the name of the network. So you can see in here we actually don't have the name of the network. So basically, when a network is configured to be hidden, it only hides the network name, but it's still broadcasting its existence. It's still telling all the devices around it that I exist. My MAC address is this, my channel is this, and it's giving all the information except the name. And basically what it's saying is, if you know my name, then you can connect to me. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run aerodump-ng against this specific network because that's our target. And we've done this in previous lectures again, but I'm just going to do it real quick here. So I'm going to copy its MAC address and I'm going to run aerodump-ng. And I'm going to specify the BSS ID of the target network, which is the MAC address. And then I'm going to specify the channel, which is 6 for this target network. And then I'm going to give it my wireless card in monitor mode, which is mon0. So again, we ran this command a lot of times. It's aerodump-ng. We're giving it the MAC address of the target network, and then we're giving it the channel, which is 6, and then we give it the wireless card name in monitor mode. I'm gonna hit enter, and you can see now aerodump-ng is running against this specific network. Now, in many cases, if the target network is a bit active, you'll actually be able to get the name of it simply by running aerodump-ng against it. In our case, we can see that the network is not active, so aerodump-ng is not able to determine its name. But what we can also see is we can see that there is a client connected to the network right here, because we said the second section of aerodump-ng show us the connected devices. So we can see that there is a device connected to this network, and the device has this MAC address. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use a de-authentication attack like we did it before, and we're going to disconnect this device from this network. But the difference is we're actually going to disconnect it for a very short period of time so that it automatically reconnects to the target network. And when it does that, it's going to send the network name in the air. Since we have aerodump-ng running, it will be able to capture that name and it'll show it to us here, and then we'll know the name of the network. So again, the attack is going to be very simple. All we're going to do is we're going to do a de-authentication attack for a very short period of time. That's going to disconnect the target device for a split second, so they won't even feel it. And the operating system will automatically connect back to the network. When it does that, it's going to send the network name in the air, and we're sniffing on that channel, so we'll be able to capture that name and we'll know the network name. So I'm going to split the screen. And we've actually run this attack before, so I'm just going to do it here again, and it'll be a chance for you to revise it. So we're going to do aeroplay-ng, deauth, and then we're going to put the MAC address of the target network after the A argument. And then I'm gonna do -C, and then I'll give the MAC address of the client that I want to disconnect, and it's this one right here. And finally, I'm gonna put the name of the wireless card in monitor mode, which is Mon0. Now, I actually forgot to specify the number of deauthentication packets to send. In the previous videos, we actually used a really big number in here so that we can keep the target computer disconnected for as long as possible. In this video, we actually want them to be disconnected for a split second, so I'm gonna use 4 packets. Usually 2 is sufficient, but I'm just gonna use 4 just to make sure that the target device will get disconnected. So because we're using a very small number, it'll be disconnected for a very short period of time, and the target person who is using that network will not even feel that. So the same command that we did before, nothing's different. airplay-ng, we're doing a deauthentication attack, and we're using a very small number of packets because we don't want the target person to feel that they got disconnected. We gave the MAC address of the target network after the A option, and then we gave the MAC address of the client that we want to disconnect after the C option. I'm gonna hit enter. And as you can see, nearly after sending 2 packets, we were able to determine the name of the network. So right here in arrow.ng, it's telling us that the name of the network is test AP. And now if the network is open, like in our case, we can just go ahead and connect to that network. Or if the network is using encryption like WIP, WPA, or WPA2, then we actually know the name of the network now, and you'll be able to launch the attacks that you're gonna learn in the next lectures against that network and then determine its key. So the attack was very simple. All we had to do is run arrow.ng against our specific target network and then deauthenticate one of the clients for a very short period of time, and they'll automatically get connected to the network. When they do that, we'll know the network name. Now let me show you how to connect to a hidden network, because the process is a bit different than connecting to a normal network. The main thing is, since I was using arrow.ng, I put my wireless card in monitor mode. So if I go and try to connect, nothing's gonna happen, and I won't even be able to discover networks, because as we said before, you can't connect to networks when you're in monitor mode. Monitor mode is only used if we wanted to capture packets that are not even sent to us, so it can't associate with one specific network. So to connect to a network, you need to be in managed mode, which is the default mode. So you can put your card back in managed mode by doing armon-ng stop, and then you put the wireless card name. So if you started it using the first method or the third method, you're gonna do lan0mon. Or in my case, I started monitor mode using the second method. So I'm gonna have to do iwconfig mon0 mode managed. Of course, in both of these cases, you have to bring the card down, do that, and then bring the card up. Now, an easier way to do this, and just to avoid all confusion, regardless of the way that you enabled monitor mode, all you have to do is just disconnect the card. So that's what I'm going to do, physically disconnect my wireless card, and then reconnect it back. Now, when you do this, if I do ifconfig, you won't even see the wireless card in here. So we have to go back to the devices menu, USB, and attach the wireless card. And for me, it's called Atheros right here. So if I do that, that's going to connect my card again. So if I do ifconfig, you'll see that I have my LAN0. And if I do iwconfig, you'll see that my LAN0 is back into managed mode. So it's in the default mode, and I can use it to connect to networks. Now, to connect to a hidden network, we're going to go to settings. So I'm going to click on all applications, and I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to go on network. Now, if you enabled monitor mode using the third method, if you go on networks, you won't see anything. Again, it's going to say that your network manager is off. So if it looks like this, that's fine. If it doesn't look like this, then go back to your terminal and run or start the network manager again, because when you do ermon ng check kill, that kills the network manager. So just do service network manager start, and that will start the network manager for you. Come back here, it should look like this, and if it's looking like this, then everything is perfect. Now, since we want to connect to a hidden network, you won't see the network that you want to connect in here. So you can see that I don't have my target network in here. So I'm gonna go on connect to a hidden network, and then it's gonna ask me for the network name. So I'm gonna put test AP like we've seen. Because in here, if we go back to the result of aerodump ng, you'll see that the name of the network was test AP. Then it's gonna ask me to put the security of the network. So again, if the network is using WEP or WPA or WPA2, then you can specify it from here. In my case, it's not using anything, so it's set to none. So I'm just gonna connect. And as you can see, I managed to connect to the network. If we go on the settings, now this network actually does not have internet connection. That's why there was very low data going in. But as you can see, I'm connected to the network. I have a good signal strength. I've got an IP address, and I have the IP address of the default gateway, and I can do anything I want now on the network because I'm fully connected to it. So when it comes to connecting to a network, you need to keep in mind that your wireless card has to be in managed mode, not in monitor mode. There is a number of ways to do that. The easiest one is just to physically disconnect the card, connect it back, and then look for the networks. If you go and look for networks and it tells you that the network manager is down, if it's off, then all you have to do is just run service network manager start, and that'll start the network manager for you. Then you can come back, connect to a hidden network, put the network name, and then you'll be able to connect. As I said, hidden networks can make a major obstacle because if the network is open, you won't be able to connect. If the network is using a password, then you can't even start doing the attacks that we're going to talk about until you know the name of the network. So your first step is always you need to know the name of the network. Another thing that might prevent you from connecting to the target network, even if it's a So I'm gonna go to my network manager. And we can see that test AP is here. It's trying to connect. And we managed to connect. And if we look at the settings again, we can see that we're getting a good signal. We have an IP address and we know the IP address of the gateway. So we basically have full access to the network and we can use it just like any other device. So the main idea to take from this is if the target network does not use a password, or if the target network uses encryption, it uses a password but you know the password, but you still can't connect to it, then there's a high chance that you are blacklisted from connecting to that network. So what you should do is change the MAC address of your wireless card and get back and try to connect. If you still can't connect, then there is a very high chance that they're using a whitelist instead of a blacklist. So in this case, you're gonna have to put the wireless card in monitor mode, look for connected clients, and change your MAC address to one of these clients. Once you do that, you can come back and try to connect, and you should be able to connect because your MAC address is going to be included in the whitelist and you'll be able to connect to the network. So everything we've done so far was without connecting to any network. All we had is a Wi-Fi card, and we had our Wi-Fi card in monitor mode, and we were just launching a number of attacks. We were able to gather information about all the access points around us. We were able to gather information about the clients that are connected to these access points. We were able to sniff packets from these clients and access points. One of the main problems that we faced was that if the network was using encryption, if it was using a key, then when we sniff the packets are not much used because the packets are going to be encrypted and we need the key to decrypt those packets. So that's the motivation for this part of this course, to get the key for the target network so that we can decrypt its packet. Further than that, we'll be able to connect to the target network after we get its key, and then we'll be able to launch more powerful attacks, and we'll be able to gather more specific information about the clients and about the access point. So this section, we're going to talk about getting the key for different types of encryption. The most famous encryptions, we have WEP, WPA, and WPA2. The first encryption that we're going to talk about breaking it is going to be WEP encryption, because it's the oldest one, it's the easiest one to break, but we still need to learn how to break it because you will see networks that still use WEP encryption. WEP encryption uses an algorithm called RC4. Each packet is encrypted at the access point and then it's sent to the air. Once the client receives it, since the client has the key, it will be able to decrypt the packet and read the information inside it. So very simple. The IP encrypts the packet, send it, client receive it, the client has the key, so the client decrypts it. Same way when the client sends the packet, it encrypt it, and then send it in the air. The access point receive it, the access point has the key, so it will decrypt the packet. So each packet that is sent into the air has a unique key stream. WEP ensures that the key stream is unique by using a 24-bit initialization vector. So the initialization vector is a random number. It's sent into each packet and it's sent into plain text. So this part, it's not encrypted. If you read the packet, you'll be able to read it in plain text. But the problem with the IV, or the initialization vector, it's very short. 24 bits is not that long. So in a busy network, there'll be a very large number of packets sent into the air. This means the number of possibilities of random IVs will be exhausted, and we will have two packets that have the same initialization vector. So the initialization vector is a 24-bit random key. It's sent into the air in each packet, and it's sent into plain text as a plain text. In a busy network, we're going to have a very large number of packets. This means that the possibilities of unique IVs will be exhausted, and if we are sniffing all these packets, we will be able to collect two packets that have the same initialization vector. Once we have two packets that have the same initialization vector, aircrack-ng can be used, it'll use statistical attacks to determine the key stream, and after that it will be able to determine the web key. Okay, so from the above we know the more IVs or initialization vectors that we collect, the more likely that we'll successfully crack the web key. So our main goal now when we try to crack web is to collect as much IVs as we can, because once we have a large number of IVs and we're gonna have two packets that use the same IV, then aircrack-ng is more likely to be able to determine the key stream and the web key for the target network. In the next video we'll do that. We'll see how that actually works, and it should be easier to understand. Okay, so from the previous video we know that to crack a web key, all we have to do is sniff packets from the target network and gather as much IVs as possible. Once we do that, aircrack-ng will be able to use statistical attacks to determine the key stream and then the web key. It does this because when we have a large number of IVs, as I said, the IV is only a 24-bit number, so it can be exhausted easily in a busy network. So once we have two packets that have the same IV, then we can decrypt the key stream and the web key. Now, when we have more than two packets, obviously the method is going to work better and our chances of breaking the key will be higher. So we're going to try to gather as much IVs as possible. Let's see the most basic case of cracking web key. First of all, I have my Wi-Fi card in monitor mode. So the first thing I'm going to try to do now is just see all the networks that are within my Wi-Fi range, and then I'm going to target one of those networks. So we're going to go aerodome ng 10, just very basic. And the second network that came up is the network that we're going to do our attacks on, so it's a test AP. So we're just going to launch aerodome against this network now. So we're going to put the BSS ID like we did before. Just launch an aerodome against this AP. And then I'm going to put the channel number 2. And then I'm going to add a write to store all the packets that we capture into a file. And let's call it basic test AP. And that's it. So aerodome ng, BSS ID, MAC address, channel, and the file that we're gonna write stuff to, and our Wi-Fi card in monitor mode. Just launch an aerodome on a target network. Now, as you can see, this target network that I have here is quite a busy one. You can see the data and the frames it's going up quickly. Well, quick enough, not very quickly, but it was very quick at the start. It is a busy network, so we have a client here. This is the section where we see the clients. So this client is actually I have it actually playing video on YouTube, so that's why it's going up quick and it slows down, quick and slows down. So we're just trying to mimic active client here. So all we have to do now is just launch aircrack, which is part of the aircrack suite, against the file that aerodome has created for us. We can launch aircrack against it even if we didn't stop aerodome, and it's gonna keep reading the file and read the new packets that aerodome is capturing here. So we're just gonna go aircrack ng, and we put the file name. So the file name was, so this file is still being created. It's still getting larger and larger because it's getting more packets, but we can run aircrack ng with that file running, and then with aerodome running, and it's gonna keep getting updated, and it'll give us the password once it can crack it. So now aircrack is working, and aerodome is collecting the packets for us. As you can see, aircrack failed to determine the key within 5,000 AVs. So it's gonna, with 3,000 AVs, it's gonna wait until the AVs reach 5,000, and it's gonna try again. Now the number of AVs actually depends on the type of web. So there's two types of web encryption. There is 128 and there is a 46-bit. The only difference is the length of the key. So the 46-bit will require less number of IVs than the 128. Now the IVs, remember when we were talking about aircrack, we said data is the number of useful packets. What I meant with that is the number of packets that have a unique IV or have a new IV. So the more packets we get with different IVs, the more our chances of cracking the web key. Now we're basically just gonna wait until aircrack can successfully crack the web key. Okay, perfect. I'm just gonna Control C error dump now. And as you can see here, aircrack successfully managed to get the key. So that's the web key for the target network. We were able to get it within 23,000 of data packets. That's because the target AP uses a 64-bit key. Let's see how we can use this key to connect to the network. So I'm just gonna copy it. I'm gonna go to Genie. And we're just gonna remove these dots and use the key like this. So now we can connect to the target network. And here we go. Let's see, test AP. And just gonna paste it here. Connect. And as you can see, our connection has been established. So we successfully recovered the key, the web key for our target network. So I can just go to and confirm, ping Google, and ping works. So we are successfully connected to the target network. So in the previous video, we saw how easy it is to crack a web key in a busy network. So we had a busy network, we had a client that was watching videos all the time, and we saw how the data was increasing very quickly. Now, the question is, or the problem that we're gonna face, is an access point that doesn't have any clients connected to it, or an access point that has a client connected to it, but he's not using the internet as heavy as we saw in the previous video. Maybe just reading articles or just going on Facebook or whatever, but not using as much data as we saw last time. So let me just show you an example of that. I'm just going to run arrow dump against the target access point, the test AP, just to have a look on an idle access point. So we have test AP now, the same access point that we used before. The only difference is that I've disconnected the device that was connected. And you can see here in the second area, the clients area, that there is no clients connected. And you can see the data is 0 and didn't even go to 1. So that's going to be a problem that we're going to face. We won't be able to crack the key like this with 0 data. So what we can do is we can inject packets into the traffic. When we inject packets into the traffic, we can force the AP to create new packets with new IV in them. We capture that IV and we do that again. That's the basic case that what we're gonna do. We're gonna explain 3 methods of doing this. We're gonna explain them in detail in the next videos. So for now, we're just having a quick look on how packet injection is gonna work. But before we can inject packets into the air, we have to authenticate our device with the target access point. See, the way that access points work, they have a list of all the devices that are connected to them. And they ignore any packet that comes from a device that is not connected to them. So if a device that doesn't have the key tries to send a packet to your router will just ignore it. It won't even try to read it or see what's in there. So before we can inject packets to the router, we're gonna have to authenticate ourselves with the router. We're gonna use a method called fake authentication. It's very simple. We're gonna have to do it before every time we try to inject. I'm gonna explain it now, and then in the future we're just gonna run the command straight away. So I have arrow dump already running now. Let's see how we can fake authenticate ourselves. Remember when I talked about arrow dump and we reached the auth, I said this is the type of authentication, and I said I'll come back for it later. So you see now the auth there's nothing here. Once we do the fake authentication, you're gonna see an OPN showing up here, which means we've successfully fake authenticated our device with the target access point. So to do this, we're gonna use AirPlay-ng. We're gonna use a fake auth attack. So we put the type of attack, and then we're gonna put the type of the number of packets that we want to send. So I'm just gonna do 0. Some people use a large number when they have when they're carrying attack, that'll take like 5 or 10 minutes. But for me, I like to just use 0 and maybe do it later manually. So fake auth 0. We're gonna use the option A, the target MAC address. So I'm just gonna copy it from here and I'll paste it. That's done. We're gonna use H to put our MAC address so that our MAC address gets authenticated with the target network.